Hello, music lovers. Gregg Bendian here at the ProgCast. Welcome back. As you know, we do like to keep things interesting in all departments, and one of the main departments, you could say, of the ProgCast is drummer world and drummers of interest on the international music scene. And today is no exception to that because I'm joined by Morgan Agren, who's a Grammy Award-winning musician on both sides of the Atlantic. If you're not familiar with him, he's played with so many great people. He was asked by Frank Zappa to be in Frank's final project before Frank passed away, which if you've listened to this program, you've heard Mike Keneally speak about that grouping. And Morgan has also worked extensively with Devin Townsend, Square Pusher, Bill Laswell, Trey Gunn, Henry Kaiser, Fredrik Thordendal of Meshuggah, a favorite of mine, and Glenn Hughes, Terry Bozzio, as I say, Mike Keneally, Denny Wally, so many great people. And Morgan is just such an interesting rhythmic source. And I think of him as someone who has just elevated rhythm and the concept of metric modulation and making complicated rhythm sound easy and funky. And so I'm so happy to welcome him to this program. Morgan, hi.
Hey, Greg. So we have to start with a thing that it's a funny connection because as I know you're a great drummer, and I didn't know that you were doing interviews until just recently. But the fact is, I did 2 interviews myself, like way before Zoom was even invented, because it was like an excuse for me to spend time with 2 certain people. And one of those people that I did interview like in 97, he mentioned you for me during the interview. He said that, and I'm going to see if you can guess who this is, because this was, he was a member of a super legendary, super charismatic band. And I just felt that, there was this Swedish guitar magazine, and they never write about stuff like, that he was doing. So I thought that I should write to the magazine and ask them if they want to use me as to get in contact with this guy, and because I thought that they should write about him, of course, but then it would be an excuse for me to hook up with him. And it was again before video, you couldn't do video calls, so it was just landline telephone, So we spoke for almost 2 hours, and I recorded with some microphone, like taped to the phone or something. And but sometime during our chat, I can't remember what we talked about, but then he said, "Do you know a guy named Gregg Bendian?" And at that point, I did not. But then he said, "Yeah, great drummer." So he talked highly of you. So do you know who it is?
What is there a hint?
Well, he was a guitar player in a very legendary band, and he had the band leader gave him an artist name.
So we're talking about Mr. Zoothorn Rollo.
Yeah, give me that long looter note and let it. Yeah, that was him.
Cool.
So that was cool. Yeah. So still now, like 20 years later, when if I see your name somewhere, it still reminds me of that he mentioned your name for me.
Well, it's a lot of history there with the Magic Band guys. I also recorded with Gary Lucas from Final Magic Band, and then I was, as you mentioned, playing on Zoothorn Rollo's solo record, drums and vibraphone. And then recently was asked, though it didn't come to fruition, I was asked by John French to play drums in the 50th anniversary of Trout Mask Replica Tour.
Oh wow, that's fantastic.
Fantastic. But it's not come together. But it just very cool to always have some connection to the Beefheart stuff, because I just think that whole rhythmic concept blew our minds, didn't it?
Yeah, of course, very much. Yeah, I had like a peak, more or less, I would say, at the end of '90s when this happened, because that's when I felt that shit. I think I found his homepage, like, so I realized, shit, you can actually contact someone from the Magic Band by clicking on an email address, because this was just at the beginning of my access to internet at all, and then homepage, oh, email contact, that's crazy. And then that's how it started, and we had a long telephone chat, and yeah. So I interviewed him for this Swedish guitar magazine, and then I called Christian Bander of Magma for the same reason, and that also ended up in 5 pages in Modern Drummer magazine, because I also told them that, hey, this guy Christian is super unique and in all levels, and as far as I know, you didn't even mention his name like ever, and it's like about time. And when it comes to Christian, he's maybe even more hard to find than Suton Roller, because he's like outside the normal world, more or less. That was at least my vision of him. But then we met and we became friends, and then so I used my opportunity from this to tell Modern Drummer that, okay, if you want to do it, I can actually do it for you. But then again, it was mainly an excuse to hang with him again.
Yeah. It's so cool that you mentioned Magma and Christian, and they're so underrated in some ways, in America at least, but well known amongst fans of forward-looking music. And didn't you also do some playing with Magma?
Yeah, I play on their not the last album, but the one before the last one. There was a new album just released, and the one before that I actually play on, because they, so I met Christian. I met him first time in year 2000 when they had a 30 years anniversary in Paris. So I went down with a friend, and that's when we first met, and we clicked, and it was super nice. And then that's when I came up with the idea to do the interview. And then I went down to Paris again, and I saw them play, and we hanged and talked, and I did the interview. And little by little, we became more friends, and like more and more friends. And then we ended up playing at the same festivals, and we talked again. And little by little, he also started to speak English, because the first couple of times, no English. And then suddenly, when we play at the Rock in Opposition festival in France, I don't know, maybe 2005 or whatever, he suddenly started to speak English just a little bit with me, and I was like, so you speak English? And then he said, well, now I know you, he said. And it was a surprise, and it's funny, because now sometimes he can, just out of the blue, he can call me on my cell phones, like, and I see it's Christian Vanner, and it's super cool, so I pick up, and knowing that his English it's not super bad. I mean, we can talk, but it's a little bit limited, and my French is 0, so we have to navigate, like using, like guessing a bit, and like doing stuff like that. So, but it's super nice when it finally calls, because it's just a connection. He's on the other line, and I'm here, and we speak, and sometimes he might say something, and I don't totally get it, and I say something, and I can hear that he's struggling to understand what I'm saying and stuff like that. But it doesn't matter. It's still us talking, so it's cool. But so in like 4 or 5 years ago, maybe, I got a call from Stella, the vocalist, and she just asked me if I would like to come down and record with them, because they were planning to record this piece called Cess, which is like a 35 minutes piece, and Christian is doing a lot of vocals on that one, and they wanted to do a re-recording of that piece. It's a early 70s piece, I think, and so they wanted to do a real studio recording, but live in the studio. And he didn't want to do drums and vocals at the same time, which he didn't do in the past either on this specific song. Sometimes he was standing up and singing and sitting down and play drums, but on this one there was always somebody else playing drums. So I got that request like 4 or 5 years ago, and also amazing, of course, because I grew up with them. And I mean, you don't get a request to play drums with Magma. It doesn't happen. It just, I mean,
It's
you
like
might get
getting called for the Magic Band to play drums. It doesn't really make
yeah,
sense.
it doesn't happen. I mean, it's more likely you can actually get a gig with the Rolling Stones if the drum seats are available, or whatever band, but not with Magma. But it happened. It was big honor, of course, but also a nice I don't know, nice connection. But they also know that I talk with them about them in, when I did this Swedish TV Tram, the education TV stuff that I did on national TV here in year 2001. Each episode I show some vinyls, like inspiration stuff, and I showed Magma albums there amongst other albums. But then some VHS copies were getting copied and ended up at the members of Magma, and Christian saw the video, and so they knew what I was doing, and they knew that I liked them a lot. So in this case, when I got asked to play, it's not like they call me only as a session drummer, because they know it's not a session. It's something they know that I would love to do from my heart, if I say so.
So what do Magma is so it's so unique and so special. I wonder if you could talk about what it is in their music that you find so engaging and exciting.
Yeah, it's just this, the music puts my mind in a special vibe. It's hard, but sometimes if somebody asks me to describe the music of Magma, and if you get like 10 seconds, like the short version, you ask, like the taxi driver, you ask him, do you know the symphonic piece Carmina Burana by Karl Orff? Like dark and like spooky, dark ambient stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And if they know that, which some people do, I mean, a lot of people know for some reason Carmina Burana. It's a famous piece. So and then I say, so take that, the harmonies from that, and put that with the Mahavishnu Orchestra or whatever, and you get the dark harmonies, but then the energy from jazz, rock, fusion stuff, and then at least they will have some kind of idea what it's about. But for me, I don't know, I heard them very early, and I don't know, I was just dragged into the music, and I liked the mystic stuff in the music that catch my attention, and of course the ambience around Christian as a force, as a energy, not only as a drummer, because obviously a great drummer, but he was so much more than a drummer. I mean, to like the couple of first times we met, I asked him, how did this happen? Like, I mean, at all? How can you make something like this up? How it's not likely. It's hard to understand how someone can create something like this with this language and the whole direction. It's just super, super, super unique. Yeah. And some people might not like it, but it doesn't matter. You can still just realize the fact that it is super special, and if you don't like it, that's fine, but just realize this is super unique.
It's its own thing.
Yeah, I think it's funny we talk about Beefheart, because I mean, you listen to Troutmask, that's also, there's just one album like that, but then you hear early 70s Magma, it's also super different than anything else.
Yeah. I did want to speak with you about your long association with Mats Oberg, because that's just such a special thing. I can tell the listeners that I had the great pleasure of seeing the band Mats Morgan at NJ Prog House, the New Jersey Prog House. I don't know how many years ago this was, Morgan, and I don't.
2005, I think.
Okay, so 2005. I don't think we had a chance to speak at that. I don't think
No.
I don't think I could speak after that. I was so blown away by how, again, the band made very complex material fun. I mean, in a way, like I liken it to Gentle Giant, where you guys are playing 5 against 4, but everybody's bouncing and grooving along to it and having fun with it. And that's how it should be, you know. So it was kind of an intellectual but ecstatic experience for me seeing you guys. It was just so much fun. And you're like me also in that you started very young, very early on, pretty aware what you wanted to do by 3 or 4. That rings a bell for me.
Yeah.
But you go so far back with Mats. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, the way we met was like I received a telephone call in we were living in the same city way up north in Sweden, a little town called Umeå, and by this time in 81 I was 14, and before that I had been doing a couple of performances with other like young people, like they have a show and somebody is doing tricks like magic tricks and somebody is doing a bicycle with one wheel and stuff like that, and I was asked to play drums, so I did that a couple of times in my area. So somebody picked up my name from that and thought that I would be a good match with Mats. So I received a telephone call from a lady introducing herself as a producer of a super small jazz club, and she said that she will bring a blind piano player there named Mats Oberg, who was 10 years old, and she told me that she knew about me, and she had an idea to bring me there to play along, to play with him, you know. And when she called me, I heard about some guy on a Swedish, like a radio program, like a super young guy playing albums in the radio, and I instantly felt that, oh wait, is this maybe the same guy who was 8-9 years old playing Frank Zappa and the Stevie Wonder albums on Swedish radio? Maybe this is the same guy. But other than that, I never met him, and I didn't even knew if this was the same guy. It probably would be the same guy. But so I said yes, that sounds great. So I went to the venue, which was a super small house, like 20 people, and that's like full house. So you drink coffee and you listen to acoustic troubadour music or something. The funny thing was that we met at the concert dates like 2-3 hours before we were supposed to play. That's when we met. So we shook hands and said hello. And so I said, well, I guess we have to play some covers because we have no music. So what should we play? And then Matt started to ask me questions about what kind of music I knew and what could possibly be performed in 2 hours without rehearsal. So he asked me, do you know Beatles? He said. And I knew only one song, which was Help. So I told him I know Help. Do you know that one? And he said, yes, I know. Okay, we have one song. And then, do you know Stevie Wonder? And the only Stevie Wonder song I knew was the first song on the Hotter Than You Lie album that my friend's older brother played every time I was hanging with him. So for some reason, I remember that reggae song, you know, like that reggae beat. Do you know that song? And he's just yes, he said, you know. Okay, good luck. I mean, that was lucky for me then. And then he goes, the last question, like, okay, do you know Frank Zappa? And I said, the only song I know about him at all is Bobby Brown, because it was played on the European radio a lot at that time, you know, at the end of the 70s. Do you know Bobby Brown? Yes, he said. Okay, so we have 3 songs. We were supposed to play for 15 minutes, I think, because there were 2 other acts at this same night. So we had a little sound check, and we have those 3 songs, and we got the sound check was also like a little rehearsal because, you know, so we played and we did the sound check and then we played, and I couldn't believe it because he was 10 at the time and he looked like maybe he was like 6 or 7, super tiny, with the clothes like typical children's clothes, like you know, super sweet and super amazing. You know, when we first met and shook hands and stuff, he was like, it was amazing. You know, so and I remember when we did the sound check and even more during the gig, when it was like, okay, now we have to do it for real, you know, and because he was standing up and playing an electric Fender Rhodes piano, singing perfect English, playing at the same time, age 10, and when we played Bobby Brown, I noticed that he took some words out because his mother didn't want him to say the ugly words in Bobby Brown. So he just left those out, you know, and listening to her mother, you know, to his mother, and just leaving those out. Amazing. And I remember my father was driving me there with his car, and Matt's father was also there taking Mats to the place. And as soon as we went off the stage after, I saw that my father was close to crying because he witnessed this the meeting of these two kids, you know. And I remember also the father of Mats was he saw a potential of, here is somebody that might have the same interest as Mats, because no one age 10 had the same preferences and music interests as Mats, like zero, you know. But
how did that happen, by the way?
Him having that interest, because his parents, especially his father, was and still is a jazz saxophone player, so he had a big record collection. And the uncle of Mats was really an active musician all his life, and when like people will send his uncle a lot of albums, wanting to do projects with stuff like projects with him. And so his uncle had like hundreds and hundreds of albums that he used to, when after he received them, listened to them, he sent big chunks of albums for Mats. So he had a great album collection, both from his father, who was playing saxophone, still is, and then his uncle. So there was a big library there. But since Mats also is born blind, he have you have the ears and you have the taste, and he was really into sounds. You know, he would listen to music like, and it's crazy because he was only I think 2-3 years old when he would listen to music for 10 hours nonstop, and he would go between typical children's music for children, and then he play Miles Davis or Mahavishnu, age 3. And it's crazy because he was a kid, but still this music. And it's funny because he said that every time if somebody plays Birds of Fire, he gets this memory of cinnamon and porridge as a kid, because his parents had to sort of, okay, eat your porridge, you know. And then Mahavishnu was in the background, and he was age, I don't know, 3, 4. So still to this day, when Birds of Fire comes on, he gets this, he feels the porridge and the cinnamon thing, you know. So it's super early, you know. So he had and he was, I think that his parents, for some periods of time, he was even too much like high energy. I think they gave him something to like calm down, because he was going too intensively into music without eating, without like hyper, you know. So and for many hours, just non-stop listening to music, and yeah, but yeah, it was amazing. But after we did this gig anyway in 81, Mats' father came to me and we shook hands, and then he said to me, maybe you can meet again, and we have drums in our basement, and if you want to play again, it's you just do it, And then after this, we started to play on a weekly basis, or like until now. I mean, we don't play on a weekly basis now, but we have been in constant contact for over 40 years. So it's that's how it started, and that's last year we also celebrated 40 years, and so I put together this little box set with 6 CDs, and to celebrate the fact that we played for all these years, and it was super nice to put this together. I could. This is like our second gig, this old, and this is some years later, and yeah, so we did this nice package of stuff, to celebrate ourselves, because it was nice for us to do that.
Look, not many people have that long a musical relationship or any relationship. So it's fantastic that you expanded upon all of your interests. I mean, I can imagine over 40 years, you're saying, what are we going to do now? What do we do next? What haven't we done?
Yeah. I mean, sometimes it's a lot of benefits, like because we know each other so well, so it's super easy for us to create music. But there is also sometimes challenges, because as with an old relationship, everyone needs to get surprised. You want the other one to do something that you don't know that the person would do, and that's the same in music, because sometimes you create really like telepathic things together, which can create amazing music. But sometimes it's nice not to know what he will do. If I do this, now he will do this, and he's doing it. But sometimes it's nice to suddenly do something else. So it's because as we all, I think, everyone that plays an instrument for a long time, you get tired of yourself. You get tired of any kind of music. You need new blood, new ideas, new collaborations, and everything. So in that sense, it's not again, it's a lot of good things, the fact that we play that much, but it's also, it's not always super simple and super natural to be totally different from time to time. You need new stuff, sometimes too.
Yeah, and I think of another Swedish unit that went on for many, many, and has gone on and continues to go on, Meshuggah, and they've been together something like 30, 40 years too. Yeah. And you worked with guitarist Fredrik Thordendal. And if you haven't seen the videos or heard Soul Niger, Fred's solo project, you have to hear it, because it's just some of the most exciting and just visceral and commanding music from any guitarist, much less any composer. And there's a great video of Morgan playing duets with Fred, which are just so much fun. Could you talk about that partnership a little bit?
Yeah, sure. We also grew up in the same town, Umeå. We are all from that place, and so I started to hear about Meshuggah quite early, like maybe before their debut, like their first official album. They did the very first album was not very officially known, but when they released the first album, I started to hear about them. I can't remember exactly when this was, but Umeå is not a big city, so of course I heard about them, and they knew about me and Mats and stuff, and we bumped into each other sometime at the bar or something, and we started to talk, and we both found out that we were big fans of Alan Holsworth, and then some years later he wanted to do a solo album, and I also recorded some stuff for him before that, which was very influenced by Alan Holdsworth. But then he started to make plans for his solo album, and so he wanted to do his thing, but still wanted to take an element from the jazz fusion world, and we already worked together, so it was natural for him to ask me. We were still living. Actually, we didn't live in Umeå still, but at least I didn't do. But I think he still lived in Umeå. But so he asked me, and yeah, so that's how that started. And at that time, I also had a little like a record label. And for me, that only meant like I could decide what to release, but I had no people, I have no distribution. It was like not, I mean, I would say record label. So, but still, I released the album, and it's funny now how, without any promotion, connections or anything like that, this album found its way far away from Sweden, I can say. I've been told that people from Rush and Slayer and Metallica mentioned this album as an like an underground favorite, you know, and Tool, and you know, yeah, it's a lot of people who mentions this album. It's incredible, you know.
Well, it's interesting because it sort of comes. Well, it has. I don't want to push this too far, but it has a bit of an otherworldly quality.
Maybe it was the first album that had the mix of typical Meshuggah metal guitar, rhythm guitars, but elements of jazz and fusion. Maybe that didn't exist in that specific way before, maybe. And it's funny because a couple of years ago, some friend of mine told me that he said that this album partly at least started a genre called gent. And so he asked me, so how about this gent connection with Soul Niger? And I didn't even know the term gent. I don't even know what it is. And then I didn't know that had anything to do with Soul Niger, but he insisted that it had, and it was it's hard to grab, but okay, I you know. But yeah, I think that and you know, there is saxophone, and there is yeah, I don't know. The truth is, the very first recording session that we had with this album actually didn't work so well, because at the time Fredrik had a part-time job at the Swedish radio. So he had access to the studio there where he worked with like millions of Neumann microphones and everything. So he's decided, okay, let's record in the radio. But we had to be there when it was closed. So we were like actually locked inside after work hours. So like 8 p.m. they close the doors and the alarms get activated, so you can't go out. And then we started to record, and then for some reason I felt that I prepared at home, but then when we started to record, I felt like I don't really get the parts as I want, and it wasn't really I couldn't play the way I wanted, and I played insanely loud, and my fingers started to swollen, and the time is like 3 a.m. and we're super tired, and we try, you know, when you come to this situation where you know it will not work, but you just try again and again and again, and you still know it won't happen. Okay, let's rest a little, let's try again, and both know it's like 1 in a million that it will work. So we just gave up, you know, and I went back to Stockholm, and Fredrik called the next day and almost crying on my answering machine and said, I want to do this, you know. And then I went back to my rehearsal place and I played the parts a bunch of times again. And then I went back to Umeå, and then we recorded in my brother's studio, normal work hours. And little by little, I managed to do the parts. And And after, I don't know, 4 or 5 days, we reached the end, and it's not one take, I can tell you. I mean, the song is 37 minutes maybe, so it's like a whole bunch of stuff. So it's not, you do one part at a time. So, but yeah, it was super nice, and this was before computers, so it was recorded on ADAT machines. So there was no like nowadays Pro Tools computer. You edit, you remove stuff. No options like that at all. I mean, so it's yeah, but it was a great experience for sure.
I also found it fascinating that on that project there's definitely a shall we say alien abduction theme in there, and UFOs and this kind of thing. And I wonder, is that something you guys were interested in at that time?
I remember that Fredrik was interested in that, and I still don't know. I haven't like checked the lyrics out in details, but I know that he was into it. Yeah, I remember even when I was on tour one time in England, I went into a gas station, and there was this like package of 3 VHS tapes with the UFO like encounters and stuff. So I bought it for him and gave it. So I for sure remember that he was into it. And his studio is named Area 51 and stuff like that. So he has this connection and fascination for that, I'm sure. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so interesting because I always thought it was fascinating that Holdsworth was openly interested in science fiction, and that so many forward-looking musicians seem to be in. Well, Wayne Shorter, for instance, huge fan of comic books and film, and the universality of life, so that why wouldn't there be life in other worlds?
Of course. Yeah. And who else? You have Sun Ra and Ace Frehley.
Right.
Uh,
Sun Ra and Ace Frehley. There you go.
yeah, exactly.
I think we got captured the whole movement right there.
Yeah, right.
Um, so yeah, man, it's so cool to talk to you because you've done so many interesting projects. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about Devin Townsend band. Are you doing Devin Townsend again this year?
Not now. I'm doing a whole lot of recordings for him, but I'm not doing the tour for various reasons. I toured him in 2019 and 20 before the pandemic, and we had a 11 or 12 piece band, like a super big band. And then after the pandemic, when he started to play again, it was decided by his record company, and after talking with him and discussing all things around tour, that he should not play with 12 piece. He should take a smaller band, and if possible bring the members from the same country, because this 12 piece was also taken from he just picked people from different countries, so it was super expensive for him. So at the end of 2019, this big tour, we had a lot of people. Many shows were sold out and stuff like that, but still he lost. It costed him so much money, and we had super nice Night Rider buses and stuff. So, and video screens. So he had too much fun, I can say. So it cost a lot of money. So I think he has to keep it down a little bit, but that's not to say that the band he has now is not a good band, because I'm sure it is, but it's a smaller band, and I think they come from more like around where he lives. So he's coming to Stockholm in 1 or 2 weeks. I think his tour starts in a week from now or something. But he will send a lot of like he's always recording stuff, and so he will send many gigabytes of stuff for upcoming projects, and And I also play on the last album that he's touring on now, Lighthouse. I don't know exactly on many tracks, but I'm still on that album too. And but he's just a super nice guy. I first received an email from him 12 years ago, through our mutual friend Mattias Eklund, who is running this software Tune Track, who is doing Drum Kit from Hell drum samples. So they have contact, and Devin asked my friend Mattias for a drummer that could play quiet.
Mm-hmm.
And that was so. And Mattias said a reply, I think Morgan can play quiet. And then I received an email from Devin asking the same thing. Can you play quiet, and can you play spooky country drums? He said. And I replied, yeah, I can play quiet, and spooky country drums, I don't know. We have to try, I said. And then he sent me a couple of songs for a project that he was working on at the time called Casualties of Cool, just one of all his side projects. And so he sent me a couple of MP3s, and I recorded what I thought was spooky country drums for that. I remember I put a towel on the snare drum, and there was some kind of, and I played some kind of beat that sounded like it was not perfectly together, like like that, and like a little bit like this, and with this super dry snare sound, and that's what I heard. So I, okay, how about this? And then I sent to him, and he was like, oh, yes. And he sent another one, and that ended up on the album, and we did 2 gigs only live with that band, and we became friends. And some years later, he were planning for this album called Empath, so I went to record for that along with 2 other drummers. And so there is 3 drummers on the album playing different styles. Like one drummer was playing just straight blast beats. Every time he played, there's blast beats. And then there's another guy playing some more stuff that was copied from the programming. So he was picking out what Devin programmed, and I was in a good position, actually, because he wanted me to do a lot of improvised part as well. So we did that together, and that ended up on the Empath album. And then I ended up doing the tour that followed that Empath album. But yeah, he's a super nice guy. I didn't know much about his work. For Devin Townsend for me was just back then somebody I knew as the vocalist for Steve Vai early in 90s, around there, or mid 90s or whatever. And I didn't know anything about Strapping Young Lad and Devin Townsend Project, really. So that I found out later, and yeah, but super nice guy, super creative, and just wonderful guy.
Yeah. Prolific guy.
Yeah. And yeah.
I'm curious about the Zappa connection with you, because so many musicians that I speak to of any instrument, who are forward-looking, progressive, if you will, are just so inspired by Zappa. And I think actually the first time I ever saw you play live was with Mike Keneally in Zappa's Universe. So that was New York, Lincoln Center in New York, and it was with you and Mike and a band, and I think Steve Vai, and orchestra.
Yeah.
So that must have been a fascinating project for you. And I guess if you could tell me a little bit about your contact with Zappa at the end of his life, and then how it leads into you performing his music later, because you also appeared with Band from Utopia with the Zappa guys.
Yeah, I think that this thing that we did in New York was in '91, and I can't even remember how he got to know about us at all, because this was before, it was not before internet, but maybe it was actually this. Yeah, it was. So somehow they knew, because we had a band when we were like even younger than mid 80s. We had a band in our hometown called Substitute that played only Zappa's music. So we did a bunch of gigs with that. And Matt started to listen to Frank when he was when he was a kid, when he was 7, I remember. And by the time Mats was 10, he had all Frank's albums, and he memorized a lot of his music, and but yeah, of course, when we met and played with Frank in Stockholm, that's where we first met, and he took us up on stage and we played with him, and the stuff that we did with him in New York was 3 years later. So that's how he knew about us. And I think the conductor managed to get our phone numbers, and he called us, and then we were connected with Frank and all that thing. So but it all started by us meeting our big music fan last time he was in Stockholm in '88. So we got to meet him, and that's also an incredible meeting, because we were able to, Mats uncle, which I mentioned before, he contacted Frank's tour manager and told him about us, that he had a relative who is 17 years old and blind, a big Zappa fan, and his friend, they had a band called played Frank's music, and so all this information was given to Frank the same day as he came to Stockholm, and of course we wanted to meet him. So he got this information, and the tour managers told us to come to the sound check and wait, because after the sound check we will be informed if it would be a good moment to meet or not. So we went to sound check waiting, knowing nothing, and then after sound check the tour manager came looking for us, and he found us, and he was like, "Frank is waiting for you." So we went backstage, and this was like maybe an hour before the concert. So we got to meet our big music idol, and he was in a super good mood and super happy, and he asked us what songs we used to play, and he said things like, "Well, I'm amazed that 2 young guys from a town called Umeå knows my music," and so we were tapping our whistling and humming, trying to this song and this song. And then I prepared a cassette tape for him. So I gave him, here is some of our own music, but also one of your tracks is there. And when he realized that the song that we had recorded of his, it was not released officially on, so it was, and that's maybe something, it was like a sensitive subject, because he didn't like bootlegs. So when he asked, "How do you know this one?" we said, "We have it on the bootleg." So, but then he said, "Maybe we should do something." And he was so sweet, he took up a pen and paper and started to write the song list for the night. And he talked with us like we were members of the band. So he said, like, "So guys, what song do you think we should start with tonight, as we were together, in the band?" Yeah, super sweet, And then he said, "Maybe we should do something." And then he said, "Tonight, in the middle of the set, we're going to play Big Swifty. And in the middle of Big Swifty, there is this open section where anything can happen. Would you like to come up and play To Mercy the Wind," which was the song that was on the tape. And we played this song only once, I think. And that was on this tape, which was like the second encore on a little club we played. Me and Mats decided, should we try To Mercy the Wind? And we hadn't played it since then. And now Frank Zappa is asking us to come up and play To Mercy the Wind. I very vaguely remember the song, and the audience was already coming in. There was no preparation at all, no drumsticks, no soundcheck, nothing. So when he asked us this, there is no, I mean, you say yes or you say no.
There's
and
no turning back.
No. Yeah, exactly. And we were stupid enough or smart enough, I don't know which one, but we said yes, yeah, you know. So he told us, you go back to your seats, and when you hear Big Swifty, the theme of Big Swifty, you have about 10 minutes to get ready, you know. So we went out, we said, okay, see you later then, and out in the audience, and the concert started, and I was like, shit. And I was screaming in Matt's ears, like, how is this second part? Is it no, it's and stuff like that, you know. And okay. And then how was it again? Is it no, it's you know. Okay, I have to remember. And then Big Swifty starts, and we leave our seats and we go. And first the guards doesn't even let us in because you're gonna play, yeah, sure, baby. And then somebody else came, yeah, like waving his hands, and so then the guard had to remove the big fans, and we went in backstage waiting. And by this time, I realized that I hadn't been on the toilet for like 8 hours or something, because we had to go into the sound check, we have to wait for Frank, we have to, you know, all this time, and I felt like shit. I really, but I couldn't leave because we were sitting behind the stage. But then another minute went by, and I told Mats, I just have to go to the toilet, otherwise I can't play. So I ran to the toilet, and when I open up the door, I hear Frank grabbing the mic, and Mats is alone sitting on a guitar case or something behind the stage, and it's like 5-6 seconds of the running time between the toilet and where Mats is sitting. So I'm running like hell, you know, and I grab Mats, and you can hear on the recording Frank is saying, let me now introduce you to, and he's reading from the paper because he doesn't remember our names, you know. And you can hear him say, where are they? And I'm coming up with Mats like this, and we say, hello. We're doing some sounds, and the band is playing a kind of reggae groove, like a super professional, because otherwise if the band would stop, it would be this like creepy silence, you know. But it's super cool. You go into that, and then I put Mats behind the keyboard, and Bobby Martin, who was playing, he just said very like strict, like information, like here is the electric Grand, and here is Yamaha DX9, good luck, he said, and then he walked by standing like this. And so I put Mats on place, and then I ran to the drums, and some roadie gave me a pair of drumsticks, and Kjell Backman left the seat, and I got behind the drums, and then we started to improvise. First, we left this, we play on the reggae groove, but then we started to do our own thing, and Scott Tunis started to play a little bit along with us. We did that for maybe 1 minute, 1.5 minutes, and that was like the best we had done ever by up to this time, you know. We never played as, because the thing was, I could see Frank Zappa is standing a couple of feet behind, in front of my drums, with his back against the audience, watching us, and with this big smile, like he's watching us like this, and that gave me unreal powers, like if you know what I mean. You see Frank Zappa is obviously liking what we do, and it gave us so much energy. So we played like never before, and then we went into the piece, which sounded okay. We missed a little bit on 1 or 2 sections because it was not rehearsed. I mean, not even close. And then we stopped the song, and then Frank conducts the band to play the theme of Big Swifty. So no breaks, no silence, everything is just ta 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 like that. And we left the stage, and the people is like, whoa! Because a lot of people knew us because this was in Stockholm, you know. So we went back to our seat and trying to enjoy the concert as a regular visitor of the audience, you know. But and then, as you know, Frank used to end all his concert, no matter what song he ends with, he stops on this chord like Ike Willis, Ray White, Terry Bozzio, thanks for coming to the show, hope you like it, good night, poof, like this. And this time we're back on our seats in the audience, and I can't remember the last song they played, but the chord comes, Ray White, blah, 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 and it picks up this paper. Mats Oberg and Morgan Agren, thanks for coming to the show. Hope you like it. Good night. Poof. And I mean, you know, we grew up listening to this, and like the ending of his concert, like 10 million times, hearing all the different band members that had been included in this last section of presentation. And now we were there. It was such an amazing thing. And we were still kids, you know. I was 20 and Mats was 17. So this is really, really big, you know. And 10,000 people in the audience. It's Frank Zappa, and we played with him, and it was crazy. And then the concert finished, and we went backstage. We continued to speak with him a little bit, and that's when it also became even more serious, because he said that there were problems in the band, a lot of arguing and fights between band members. So we knew about that, but so he said that I need. So he looked at me, like with his intense, like, and he said, I need a new drummer and keyboard player, he said. And he was obviously speaking to us, but he didn't say like, would you like to? But he said, I need a new drummer and keyboard, and this silence, you know, and just watch me like this. But obviously we're talking to us, and he gave me his phone number, and then he so basically he left, and having us think that it's quite likely that something can happen now, because he liked us. He needs a new drummer and keyboard player. We played drums and keyboard. He gave me his phone number. So I waited, like, every time the phone call the next couple of months, I had like a little, maybe it could have something with this, you know, but nothing happened. So by like 2 years later, I decided to go to LA to find out the situation, because I brought some letters, but and one time I called the Barking Pumpkin office, and I don't know if you know this guy, Gerald Fialka. He worked at the Barking Pumpkin, the mail order company, record company. So that time when I called there, he picked up the phone, and I said that my name, and I'm calling from Sweden, and I just wanted to see if there is any way to connect with Frank. And then he said, oh, you're the guy who played in Stockholm, he said. And I was like, how the hell can he know? Like 2 years later, he know instantly who I am. And then I told him that how, and he said, you have to come here. The letters doesn't reach Frank really, so you have to come here. And he said, you can sleep in my sofa, so just come over. So that's when I booked the ticket, and I I went to LA in 1990 this was in 1990, and 2 days later I was standing in his house. And that's also when he told me that he was sick in cancer, and but at that time he told me it was shrinking, so the cancer was going down, but not too long after it got worse again. But so he tried to involve me and Mats in a couple of projects. He had one project in Japan that he was working on that didn't happen, but where he wanted to have us. And then he was in control for the Zappa's Universe, also the show that we did in New York, even though he wasn't performing with us. But the truth is that he was supposed to appear on that concert, but he was actually on his way. He was sitting on the airplane in LA on his way to New York. There was some technical problems with the airplane, and he was already feeling ill and not feeling well. So he was actually leaving the plane, sitting there, but leaving the plane. Didn't have energy to wait for the technical problems they had. So he decided to go back home. And that's like that's where when his family announced that he was sick. Yeah, in 91. And then we did another project under his control, or that he was arranging in 93. We did with the Lincoln Symphony Orchestra, Avery Fisher Hall. So it was big orchestra, more like classical stuff, but also combined with rock quartet. So we played a couple of stuff there, and that was in, I think, March 93. And then he passed away in December 93.
Yeah.
So that's the Zappa thing.
But just conceptually, what did Frank mean to you and Mats?
I think his music just he did so much music. I don't like all the albums in the same way, but there is specific songs, specific albums that just influenced me super much. His compositions, I think that the way I even loved his synclavier works, like the program stuff. I loved the first time I heard Jazz from Hell, it sounded super stiff, super strange, like what the fuck is this? But only a couple of times, you listen a few more times, then all the melodies and all the harmonies started to get to you, and you didn't think about the drum programming on the first track and stuff like that. And now, like 30-40 years later, I still love the album, and I love him as a composer. I think that there is, I don't know, he had this ability to create moods. I mean, even like sometimes you put on an album like Uncle Meat, and there is this recording of a telephone conversation with Ian Underwood when he's about to do audition for the band. And even that, where he puts this 45 seconds telephone recording, where it's on the album and how it comes in, the sound on the recording, the music before and after, it gets it. I don't know, there is this amazing atmosphere, and how it's all being put together, the sound on Uncle Meat, and I mean, it's just or as Steve Vai once said, that there has never been, there will never be, and there isn't one like Frank Zappa, and you have to agree, because and how he was able to produce so much music in a short time like this is crazy. It's just insane. Like 60 plus albums, passing away at age 53. It's insane.
And it's not even the albums. It's that that's only the tip of the iceberg of what he had created. So during his lifetime, and then it continues and continues.
Yeah.
But it's remarkable. Also the scope of his output, from the blues based stuff, the doo-wop based stuff, all the way up to the atonal or electronic stuff.
Yeah.
No, that, and to me that's uniquely American. It's he's just the guy. It's like, okay, we have complete freedom to do whatever we want, or I'm taking complete freedom to do whatever I want. It's incredibly inspiring.
Some there is just some songs that's just super influential, and like also like a piece like the piano piece Little House I Used to Live In. Just the chords and the melodies, it's just so beautiful. I mean, there is no drums there, it's just a simple recording of a piano, but I just really love some of the the melodies and the harmonies is amazing. And for me, I grew up a lot on the Live in New York album, because of course, I mean, you have Purple Lagoon and Black Page and all the great playing, of course. I mean, still to this day, I think that it's hard to have a distance to. If I would hear that album now for the first time, I don't know how I would react, but as a 14, 15, 16-year-old hearing the drumming on Purple Lagoon during Michael Brecker's and Randy Brecker's solos. The band playing during Purple Lagoons is just, ooh, it's so great. It's fucking amazing. And you have these songs. It's amazing. I was listening to that album over and over, but I was also listening a lot to You Are What G Is, One Size Fits All, and I mean, and then you have, I mean, stuff like I was never a super big fan of like a song. If you take a song like Camarillo Brillo, it's nice. It's like has an entertainment vibe to it. It's funny, a bit joke, like it has a joke vibe to it. But for me, like Inca Roads is like, I mean, One Size Fits All is, when people ask me what album should I start with, One Size Fits All is good because it's quite easy to take, but you still have all the Zappa stuff in there without being too much, you know. And it's just it's, the songs are not too long and the guitar solos are not crazy long or whatever. So One Size Fits All is a good one, I think.
Inca Roads.
Yeah, amazing, just incredible.
Every time.
Yeah, every time.
Every time Inca Roads is there, he changes it. He'll do something else, something different with it, you know. But yeah, I think that's key. It's a key masterwork for Frank. And it's funny because Live in New York was a big one for me too. Black Page. My high school rock band tried to play Black Page. I remember transcribing it to the best of my ability, and we played it. But also, I had Randy Brecker on this program, and I asked him about that engagement in New York. And of course, right after that is Heavy Metal Bebop, Brecker Brothers with Terry Bozzio, right?
One of my all-time favorite.
What's it like, you know, Purple Lagoon, Randy? Tell me about it. He goes, it was so fucking loud on stage.
Oh, really?
We're right next to Bozzio, you know?
Yeah.
So they were talking about how like had never been hit with rock volume like that.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
I saw like 20 years ago in my hometown, they have a good jazz festival, and Randy Brecker was playing there, and there was a press conference with Randy Brecker, and I happened to pass the room when he was interviewed. So I went in there for 2 minutes, and when I was there, somebody asked about Zappa in New York. And I had a feeling that, I mean, it was for him, of course, as everyone else, it must have been an amazing experience. I don't, however, think that he was a super big fan of all the music. But the only thing he said, what's your memory? What's something you can tell about that? And then he said, the music scores were impeccable, he said. So he remembers all the handwritten scores that he'd never seen anything so perfect, almost like that. That's the only thing he said.
Yeah, that's right. And they knew what an impeccable score looked like because they'd seen it all, you know. Wow. So Morgan, I'm very curious about what you're up to musically these days. What's keeping you occupied?
Well, we finished the 40 years anniversary tour and the release of the big box, CD box. So now we don't play much. Me and Mats don't do much gigs at the moment. So I'm basically doing a lot of recordings here in my little studio. So I have this is my little house in my garden. So I have this big kit here where I record drums for people. Send me music and I record drums. So I have this. I have 3 bass drums. I have a 28 big kick drum on the over there with no damping, like a big March drum, and there is a dead bass drum there and a high pitch Elvin Jones type sound. So I have all these mics and preamps and stuff. So I'm spending a lot of time recording here. So that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna record now for for Devin Townsend, who is sending me a bunch of stuff. I think he has 3-4 albums in the pipeline that he's working on. He always all these kinds of projects that he's working on. So I'm gonna record on those. And I've been recording also for, this is something you probably know. Do you know Thinking Plague?
Yeah.
Michael Johnson. And so a friend of mine started to communicate with him a little bit and doing some more dubs on some upcoming stuff. So he sent me a couple of songs too. I'm not sure if it's going to be a Thinking Plague or Michael Johnson solo, but I have stuff from him in my computer. And yeah, so next couple of months I will be a lot in my studio to record for various people. And it's nice to have this option to leave, because my house is 5 seconds. You go out, you in the garden, and you can be in your working place. It's super simple. It's not even a studio. It's just the house that was here when we moved, so I made it to a studio. So it's so I will do that. And yeah, recordings, a lot of recordings.
Great. Well, I hope that we can get to meet in person. Hope I can get to hear you play live again.
Me too. I hope that actually I'm planning to bring my son to New York in like early April. He's 19 and he wants to go there. He's into graffiti, and special, like he has a lot of special interests, and he wants to go to New York. So I would be super happy to take him there. And we were planning to combine that I could use combine a trip with him, but also do some kind of music project there. I'm not sure if I will have time to do that, but there is a club called Nublu in New York. So I've been in contact with Nate Wood and even Marian and some people, and everyone is open-minded and excited to do stuff. It's just I just need to book the flight first and then when everything's booked, we'll see if there is any possibility to make an open jam or something. Because if that's the case, we will do something in New York when I come there, or early April or something. But I'm not sure if it's likely to happen, but at least ideas. But other than that, I don't know.
I'm actually going to New Blue on Saturday to hear Percy Jones with Kenny Grahowski, Tim Motzer, and Alex Skolnick.
Oh, really? So you live in New York?
I'm in the New York area, yes.
Oh, I thought you for some reason were in LA. I don't know why, but okay.
Yeah, sometimes people think that. I do so much with LA guys.
Yeah.
But yeah, it'll be interesting because I've never been to the club, and they are having some, more cool stuff there, and probably end up doing something there with Mahavishnu Project. It seems like a good venue for an instrumental,
Yeah.
So Morgan, I just want to take this opportunity to thank you for taking the time to chat. You've always been a fascinating drummer to me, and so I'm glad we had a chance to talk about all this cool stuff. We could go on and on and on. We didn't even get into some areas there, but where can people find your music?
My homepage, which is my name, morganagren.com, and then I use Facebook and Instagram. So yeah, I post a lot of stuff all the time, so it's easy to find me on the World Wide Web, I think.
Excellent. Well, folks, my guest has been Morgan Agren, one of the great drummers, and heck of a nice guy. It's a pleasure to speak to you all.
My pleasure.
Thank you for being with us. And folks, hit our Patreon, hit our like and subscribe, and keep supporting creative music live and on the internet. And we'll see you again next time. I'm Gregg Bendian. Peace, everybody.
Cheers.